I was reading an essay by William Styron several years ago, and it was about his trip down the Nile. And he quoted from Gustave Flaubert's Nile journal, and I found the quote so raucous and interesting I decided to read the Nile journals. And I decided to put him in a short story. I'd written about half of the first chapter when I realized that Florence Nightingale was on the Nile at the exact same moment. So I became very interested in how they could be foils for each other. So I basically fell in love with each of the characters and decided to put them together in this exotic setting, Egypt, which they both explored at the same time. He was sort of a very innovative writer, but also the bad boy of French literature. He was in love with language and prostitutes. Those were his two main interests in life, and he was equally devoted to each of those. He had a very wicked sense of humor, and so did Nightingale. What drew me to them as a pair of characters was that they were both in a state of abject despair at the start of this novel. He had just finished writing his first book, which was called The Temptation of St. Anthony, and he asked his two best friends to listen to him read it aloud. It took 32 hours. Anyway, they pronounced it just an utter failure. She had just turned down her only serious matrimonial suitor. Her parents wanted her to marry more than anything. She was trying to find a professional career for herself, though she didn't know what that might be, because women were not allowed in any of the professions in 1849. Her family had been blocking her vigorously at every step of the way. They didn't actually meet that we know of, according to the historical record, although Flaubert reports seeing an Englishwoman with, quote, a hideous eye shade attached to her bonnet. And we know that Nightingale had such a hideous nightshade, so we know that they saw each other. Egypt was very important to both of them. Egypt was recommended to them as a place to refresh their minds, and they considered it a place where they could let their hair down. Because it was also unregulated and wide open, they had a lot of risky adventures. They rode camels in a caravan across the desert. They climbed through the pyramids. Flaubert gets stuck in a tar pit cave. They have a lot of really wonderful and funny adventures. Also, they were both geniuses, but of course they didn't know it. They felt like freaks. So when one genius meets another genius, voila, you have happiness and you realize there are other people in the world like you. So I think their friendship allowed them to meet their destinies.